The morning light in Lancaster had a softness that always calmed me, slipping through the kitchen curtains like a memory and touching the old oak table where I'd shared thousands of breakfasts with my family. I poured myself a cup of coffee, dark roast, no sugar, and sat by the window, watching the fog lift from the cornfields beyond the fence, the house quiet, almost too quiet. And after my husband Robert passed away 3 years ago, silence became both a comfort and a wound, so I filled it with small rituals, watering the ferns, polishing the old furniture, organizing my late husband's tools in the shed, though I never used them, because this house had stood for nearly 60 years and every creak of its wooden floors seemed to echo our past conversations. My son Daniel still visited sometimes, 39 now, a construction foreman who liked to pretend he had everything under control, though in truth he'd been tense lately, short-tempered, restless, and when I asked how work was going, he only said, "Fine, Mom," and changed the subject. While my daughter Claire had moved back in 6 months ago after her divorce, quieter than Daniel, her sadness like a fog that never lifted, and at 38 she still called me Mummy when she needed something. That tenderness always breaking my heart a little. That morning, while I was rinsing my mug, I noticed the faintest hum, like the low buzz of a bee caught in a jar, frowned, turned off the faucet, and listened as the sound came from behind the kitchen wall near the light switch, pulsing irregularly, sharp one moment and soft the next. Then the overhead light flickered twice and went still. Strange, I thought, making a mental note to call the old electrical company that had installed our wiring decades ago. But when I mentioned it to Daniel later that afternoon, his reaction startled me. "Don't call them," he said quickly, almost snapping. "Those guys overcharge for nothing. I'll send someone. I know someone you know." I asked, "Yay, a friend, best electrician in town, Victor Hale. He'll stop by tomorrow morning. Just don't touch anything until then." And he sounded oddly defensive, as if the idea of anyone else coming near that wall bothered him. That night the hum grew louder, and I could feel it through the floorboards when I lay in bed, a faint vibration traveling up through the mattress, the house once my refuge suddenly feeling like it was breathing in a way it shouldn't. And at sunrise the doorbell rang. A man in a navy work shirt standing on the porch with his name stitched neatly above the pocket, Victor Hale, Electrical Services, smiling kindly as he tipped his cap and said, "Good morning, Mrs. Ellison. I'm here about that wiring problem." And less than an hour later his voice would shake when he whispered the words that changed everything. "Ma'am," he said quietly, eyes pale with alarm, "get your things and get out of this house immediately. Don't tell your children anything." And for a moment, I just stared at him, certain I'd misheard. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice trembling more from disbelief than fear. But Victor didn't answer right away, looking toward the kitchen doorway, as though he expected someone to appear there at any moment before lowering his voice and saying, "Mrs. Ellison, there's something in your basement that shouldn't be there. Something someone installed intentionally." And I felt my pulse quicken. "Install? You mean the wiring?" He hesitated. "Not exactly. I found a device wired into your main electrical line. It's pulling energy from the circuit and feeding it into another system hidden behind the insulation." And I shook my head. "That can't be right. My son handled the renovations last year. He checked every outlet himself." But Victor met my eyes steadily and said, "Then your son knows exactly what I'm talking about." And the kitchen seemed to tilt around me. "Show me," I said, though he hesitated. "You're sure?" "It's not easy to look at Tiny to see it," I said firmly, my voice surprising me because it didn't sound like my own. And we went to the basement together, the stairs creaking under our feet, the air heavy with the scent of old paint and damp concrete, the hum that had haunted my nights growing louder as we descended, blending with the faint buzz of electricity while Victor's flashlight cut through the dimness, revealing the same boxes and storage bins I'd kept down there for decades, Robert's old fishing gear, holiday decorations, photo albums, nothing seeming out of place until Victor stopped at the far wall behind the furnace, crouched, and pulled aside a section of insulation, and my breath caught in my throat because hidden behind it was a small metallic box no bigger than a toaster, its surface faintly glowing with red indicator lights, thin copper wires running from it into the main power conduit and from there up toward the ceiling. "What is that?" I whispered. "It's not standard electrical equipment," Victor said grimly. "It's been rigged to deliver time current pulses. The wiring runs straight to the upper floor. Most likely your bedroom." And I stepped closer, My knees weak. What would that do? He glanced at me, then back at the device. Prolonged exposure to these pulses can disrupt heart rhythm, sleep patterns, and neurological function. It's like being slowly electrocuted in doses too small to detect. And my mind rebelled against his words. That's insane. You're saying someone's trying to— Yes, he interrupted quietly. Someone wired this to harm you, Mrs. Ellison, he said, and I staggered backward, gripping the stair rail as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. The house that had once felt like my safest place now seemed to hum with menace. Each flicker of light a reminder that something poisonous pulsed within its walls, and whoever did this, Victor said softly, knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew you trusted them. I clung to the stair rail, trying to steady myself, whispering, there must be some mistake. Maybe it's part of the new system Daniel installed last year. He said he wanted to modernize the wiring. But Victor shook his head and told me no electrician would install something like this in a residential home. This isn't safety equipment, it's manipulation equipment. And whoever set this up knew how to disguise it so it would look routine to anyone who didn't know what to look for. Then, he turned his flashlight upward, tracing the copper lines that disappeared into the beams, explaining these wires run straight under your bedroom floor. And if you've been feeling tired, dizzy, or having irregular heartbeats, this would explain it. A chill rippled through me as I admitted I thought it was just age. I've been waking up at night with palpitations, sometimes dizzy, sometimes confused, and Victor nodded grimly, saying that's how it's designed, to make it look like natural health decline. It's clever and cruel. I swallowed hard and reminded him, you said it was installed during the renovation. Daniel handled all of that, and he looked up sharply, asking, when exactly was that? Last autumn, I said. He insisted on redoing the basement wiring, said it was unsafe. I told him to leave it alone, but he said he'd hired a private crew from his construction company, and I didn't even question it. Victor stepped back, rubbing his forehead, saying that timing fits perfectly. A setup like this would take days of work and total access to the circuit lines. It wasn't done by accident or overnight. And then a thought came to me, sharp and painful. Claire moved back in right after that renovation ended. Does she go into the basement? Victor asked. Sometimes she keeps old boxers down here. I paused. She studied biomed engineering before she got married. She's always been fascinated by how the body reacts to electricity. And he exhaled slowly, a grim realization crossing his face as he said, Mrs. Ellison, the person who designed this system, understands both electrical engineering and biology. They know how much current a human heart can take before failure. The words lodged in my chest like glass, and I looked around the basement, the place where I'd done laundry, where my children used to play hide and seek, and it no longer felt like part of my home. It felt like a trap. I don't believe my children would ever hurt me, I said weakly, and Victor's voice softened as he replied, I know that's what every parent wants to believe, but facts don't lie. Whoever installed this has been slowly hurting you for months. I pressed a trembling hand against the wall, the faint hum still there, steady, merciless. How long? I asked. Until it kills me. And he met my eyes and said, if we hadn't found it today, maybe a few more months. Maybe less. Upstairs I heard a soft thud, the sound of footsteps. Claire was awake, and Victor's expression hardened as he said, you can't stay here another hour. We need to get you out now. And for a long moment I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, staring into the dim space that had become unrecognizable to me, the hum behind the wall seeming louder now, like the heartbeat of something malignant hiding inside my home, until Victor touched my arm gently and said, Mrs. Ellison, listen to me, we have to move quickly. Whoever did this might come down here any minute. You need to grab your essentials identification, financial papers, medications, and leave. Don't try to confront anyone. I could barely find my voice as I said, if I just leave, they'll know something's wrong. But he met my eyes, calm but firm, and said, better that they suspect you're upset than find out you've discovered their plan. Once they realize that, they'll have nothing to lose. I felt my stomach twist. Claire's upstairs. She'll see me packing. Tell her you're going to the pharmacy or visiting a friend. Keep your tone normal. I'll stay near the kitchen and make sure she doesn't follow you, he said, and I nodded shakily and climbed the stairs, each step groaning beneath my feet, echoing in my ears like a countdown. The sunlight through the hallway windows looking too bright, almost mocking in my bedroom, where I opened the small wall safe behind the framed photo of Robert, and my hands trembled as I pulled out the envelope with my will, the deed to the farmhouse, insurance papers, and a stack of savings bonds, stuffing them into my leather handbag along with a few clothes, my jewelry box, and a photograph of my children when they were little, both laughing, both innocent. Mom, Claire's voice floated from the hallway. Are you up? I thought I heard someone downstairs, and I froze before calling out, It's the electrician. Forcing a steady tone, he's fixing the wiring. Oh, her voice softened. Do you want me to make some tea? No, sweetheart, I'm fine. I paused, then added, I might go out for a bit later just to get some air. Okay, Mom, she said lightly, but there was something off in her tone, too sweet, too careful. And I zipped my bag and glanced around the room one last time. This place once my sanctuary, now feeling suffocating. And when I reached the kitchen, Victor was pretending to tighten a fixture near the sink, while Claire was in the living room scrolling through her phone. Her eyes flicked toward us, curious but not suspicious. And I forced myself to sound casual as I said, I'm heading out for a while, holding my handbag close to my side as if it weighed nothing at all. Need a ride? She offered, and I replied with a small smile, No, I'll manage. Then, as soon as the front door closed behind me, Victor followed, toolbox in hand, guiding me quickly toward his van parked across the street, and only when we were safely inside did I exhale, my entire body trembling as if I had been holding my breath for hours. Where are we going? I whispered, and Victor started the engine, saying, Somewhere quiet where we can talk. And then, glancing in the rearview mirror, he added, And then we figure out how to prove what's been happening to you before they realize you're gone. So we drove in silence for several miles, the farmhouse shrinking in the distance until it vanished behind the rolling Pennsylvania fields. And I couldn't stop shaking because every memory of laughter, every Christmas morning, every night I tucked my children into bed, felt poisoned now. Victor pulled into a small diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions, and the smell of coffee lingered in the air. And we sat in a corner booth far from the windows while I wrapped my hands around a warm mug as if it could steady me. And he spoke first, saying, We can't go to the police yet, not without evidence they can hold in court. Right now it's your word against your children's, and they'll call it delusion. We need something undeniable, photos, recordings, documents. I swallowed hard and asked, So you're saying we go back? And he nodded slowly, saying, I'll go. They know me as the electrician. It won't seem strange if I stop by again claiming I forgot a tool or need to check a connection. And the thought of him returning there made me sick with worry. As I said, they're dangerous. Victor, Buddy gave me a faint smile and replied, So am I, when it comes to justice. After lunch he drove me to a quiet roadside motel near the highway where the sign read Meadow Inn, weekly rates available, and the clerk barely looked up when Victor paid in cash and signed the room under his name. Room 12, smelling faintly of lemon cleaner and loneliness as he instructed. Stay here, lock the door, if they call or text answer like everything's normal. Don't tell them where you are. And I nodded and asked, And you? And he said, I'll be back before dark with proof. And when the door closed behind him, the silence pressed down on me like a physical weight as I sat on the bed clutching my handbag and staring at the floral wallpaper that blurred through my tears. For the first time in my life, afraid of my own children. Hours crawled by until at 4 o'clock my phone buzzed, Claire's name on the screen. Mom, where are you? Daniel says, The electrician came back. Are you okay? And I typed back quickly, I'm fine, sweetheart, just running errands. But she replied within seconds, What errands? Want me to meet you? And the kindness in her words felt rehearsed now, a language of deceit I no longer recognized. My hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone before typing, No need. I'll be home later. Then at 6, Victor finally called, his voice tense as he said, Mrs. Ellison, I got the evidence, photos, recordings, even something written, but there's more. They were talking in the kitchen while I was in the basement, and my heart pounded as I asked, What did they say? And he answered, They know something's wrong. They said, You're acting strange. And worse. Claire told Daniel, It's time to speed things up, and I repeated, Speed things up, my voice cracking as he said quietly, Yes, they're planning something tonight. My grip tightening around the phone as I whispered, Tonight. What do you mean tonight? And his voice came low and urgent, saying, I don't know the details yet, but they talked about a final step. Daniel mentioned a fuse trip or something that would end things quickly. Whatever it is, you can't go anywhere near that house again. The air in the motel room felt thin as I murmured, they're my children, though the words sounded hollow now. And Victor said flatly, right now, there are people who have convinced themselves you're worth more dead than alive. You have to accept that before we can keep you safe. And I sank onto the bed, my heart hammering, as I asked, what do we do? And he said, I'm heading to the police, but I want you ready in case they find you before I get there. Don't open the door for anyone. Keep your phone closed. And if anything feels wrong, call me or 911 immediately. And I promised I would, though promises don't stop fear from crawling under your skin. An hour passed, then another. The motel's neon sign flickering through the curtains, like a warning light, as I tried to distract myself by watching TV, but every sound outside made me jump. Until at 8:17 p.m. my phone buzzed again with a text unknown number that read, Mrs. Ellison, we know you're at the Meadow in room 12. Please come out. Let's talk before things get worse. And my blood turned to ice as I checked the peephole and saw nothing, just the dark parking lot and the pale light of the vending machine outside. Then another message came, seconds later, this one from Claire. Mom, please, we're here. We just want to help you. You've been confused lately. Come home. Let us take care of you. And I backed away from the door, shaking because they'd found me. And the phone rang again, Victor saying, don't open that door. Before I could speak, I'm 5 minutes away. I called the police already. Stay away from the windows. But I couldn't help myself. And as I peeked through the curtain, headlights swept slowly across the lot, cutting through the darkness like a warning. A familiar silver truck pulled in Daniel's. He got out slowly, scanning the row of rooms with the predator's patience. Claire followed behind him, her blonde hair tied back, her movements careful, almost rehearsed, as if they had practiced this moment. They're here, I whispered, my throat tightening. Victor's voice hardened instantly. There's a back exit near the ice machine. Go now. I grabbed my purse with shaking hands and slipped out through the rear hallway, every step echoing too loudly in my ears. The night air was cold against my skin, sharp and unforgiving, and the gravel bit beneath my shoes as I hurried across the lot. At the far end of it, Victor's van appeared, headlights flashing twice. Our signal. I sprinted toward it, lungs burning, heart pounding. When I climbed in, breathless, he floored the gas pedal without hesitation. They know everything, I said, trembling uncontrollably. They said I was confused, that I imagined it all. Victor kept his eyes fixed on the road, jaw set. That's how they'll defend themselves. But tonight, we'll make sure the truth speaks louder than their lies. The van sped through the narrow Pennsylvania back roads, the headlights slicing through the mist that had rolled in from the fields, turning everything ghostly and unreal. Victor's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I sat beside him, clutching my handbag so tightly my fingers ached, feeling the weight of my documents, my will, my life, everything my children had tried to erase. We're heading straight to the county police, Victor said steadily. I've already forwarded the photos and recordings to the detective I spoke with. They're setting up an intercept near Route 23. We'll be safe soon. I wanted to believe him, but as we turned a corner, my eyes caught something in the rearview mirror. A pair of headlights following us. Close, too close. They're behind us, I whispered, dread flooding my chest. Victor's jaw tightened further. Stay down. He pressed harder on the gas. The van roared down the empty road, engine straining, but the silver truck behind us matched every move with terrifying precision. I could see Daniel's face through the windshield. Calm, cold, determined, as if this were just another transaction to complete. Claire was beside him, talking frantically on her phone, her hand gesturing wildly. They're calling someone, Victor muttered, maybe trying to find out where the police are. My heart pounded so violently it hurt. They'll never stop. They will, he said, eyes narrowing with resolve. Tonight, just ahead, flashing red and blue lights appeared through the fog like a miracle breaking through the dark. 2 patrol cars blocked the intersection. Victor slowed the van, raising one hand out the window in surrender. An officer stepped forward cautiously, but Daniel's truck suddenly veered, tires screeching as he tried to turn around. Before he could escape, another cruiser pulled in from behind, cutting him off completely. Step out of the vehicle, a voice shouted through a megaphone, sharp and commanding. Victor pulled over fully, and I saw Daniel freeze inside his truck. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes, naked and undeniable. Claire's lips were moving rapidly, insisting something, shaking her head in frantic denial. Within seconds, officers surrounded their truck, guns drawn, the scene illuminated in flashing lights. Claire stepped out first, her voice shrill and desperate. "This is a misunderstanding. Our mother's sick. She's delusional." I opened my door, trembling but resolute, and stepped into the cold night. "Sick," I called out, my voice breaking but clear. "You made me sick. You tried to kill me." Both of them turned toward me at once. Daniel's expression hardened into something unrecognizable, a mask of pure contempt. Claire's face crumpled, but not from guilt, from anger at being caught, at losing control. The officers began searching the truck methodically. One of them held up a small metal box wrapped in duct tape and wires. Another found a notebook on the seat pages filled with voltage calculations and notes labeled Phase 4 termination. "Looks like we've got our proof," the lead detective said quietly to Victor, and I felt something inside me finally loosened. As they handcuffed Daniel and Claire, I stood still, shaking from head to toe, unable to move. Claire looked at me, her eyes full of rage and disbelief. "You ruined everything," she hissed, venom dripping from every word. I wanted to cry, to scream, to ask her why, but no words came, only silence filling the space between us. Victor placed a steady hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "It's over," he said softly. And for the first time in months, the night was quiet. No hum, no flicker, no lies, only the sound of justice humming steady through the dark. 6 months have passed since that night, yet I still wake sometimes expecting to hear the faint electrical hum through the walls. Then I remember I no longer live in that house, the farmhouse where I raised my children, where I buried my husband, where I almost lost my life, is gone. I sold it 2 months after the trial ended because I couldn't bear the silence of those rooms, or the smell of burned dust from the wires they'd hidden. The court proceedings were long and painful, each day reopening wounds. Daniel sat in his gray suit, staring at the floor most of the time, showing no remorse whatsoever. His lawyer argued desperation that the gambling debts and the pressure from loan sharks had driven him mad. Claire's defense was colder, more calculated. She blamed her brother and claimed she'd only helped him out of fear. But the evidence was overwhelming. Victor's photographs, the voice recordings, and the notebook full of voltage logs and health notes erased every doubt the jury might have had. When the verdict came, the courtroom felt like a tomb, heavy and suffocating. Daniel received 25 years in prison with no parole for 15. Claire got 18 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. I didn't cry when the judge read the sentence. I had run out of tears months earlier. After the trial, Victor helped me move north to Erie, near the lake. He said the air would be good for my heart, and he was right. The days here are quieter, the sun sets softer, and the wind carries peace instead of fear. I've started painting again, something I hadn't done since Robert died. And the colors on the canvas remind me that life, even after betrayal, can still hold beauty. Sometimes Victor visits on weekends, and we sit on the porch drinking tea, watching the gulls circle above the water in wide, patient arcs. We rarely talk about that night anymore. We talk about small things, gardens, books, the smell of rain, letting the conversation drift gently over ordinary details that feel precious simply because they are ordinary. But every once in a while, our eyes meet, and in that quiet pause something unspoken passes between us, and I know we're both remembering how close death came to finding me, how near it stood without my realizing, and how a stranger's intuition changed everything. I've learned that family is not defined by blood, but by the safety you feel in someone's presence, by the calm that settles in your chest when they walk into a room. Love is not what people say, it's what they protect. The people who love you will never make you afraid to breathe in your own home. Never turn your sanctuary into something that steals your sleep. When I close my eyes at night, I sometimes still hear Victor's voice from that first morning, steady in my memory, as if it were spoken only yesterday. Calm, urgent, unforgettable. "Get your things and get out. Don't tell your children anything." Those words saved my life. Simple and direct, cutting through confusion and denial like a blade. Now, when the wind hums through the trees outside my new window, it no longer sounds like danger whispering at the walls. It sounds like warning and wisdom carried gently through the dark. The echo of a truth learned too late, but lived well after. Evil can hide in familiar faces, wearing smiles you trust without question. But salvation often comes from a stranger brave enough to tell you to run.